Hello everyone, it's Eon here, and it's time to get into August 2024, the Fantasy Review number 1. Now, we got a lot to get through here, so hold on tight. Let me know if you wanted me to do this in one video, or multiple videos, or how. Anyway, we're going to start with Artisan Guild. Artisan Guild this month is due Myrmidons of the Death Tide. There's the entire release. You get some Shark Riders. Notice they come both with a rider and without. And some multiple more sculpts. And each of these have an alternative version as well. So it's like a 3-for-1 deal. Like I said, the sharks come by themselves. Here we have a Gyros, the Sea Jotun. So I guess the leader. And we have some High Tide Jurican Myrmidons with alternative versions. So not only do you get 6, you get 12. We have Makakuna, the Tide Champion, along with Zarkash, the Master of the Lightning Eels. We have some weapons and sunken effigies, and then we have in Artisan Guild, they almost always do a pinup version, which we see with Tryphosa, the Mother of the Sharks. Arbiter Miniatures is moving to my mini factory for the most part that I can tell. It's hard to get a preview. All I can see for August right now is this preview that they released in July. So I believe this is a preview for August. I could be wrong, but I do believe they're continuing with the Kobolds theme for the month of August. Next up, we have Archvillain Games. Archvillain Games does both sci-fi and fantasy, but naturally we're going to focus on the fantasy release for this video. This is Sandstorm, Dreams of Amandia, and here is Amandia, the voice from afar. There is a lot going on with this miniature. I don't think it's more of dreams, I think it should be nightmares, but let's look and see. We have Yitaru and Zarahi. We have Kujata and Jambir, the Hidden Blade. We have Rashahid, the False Sultan, and Zukana, the Dervish. We have an Aswadam Rider, 1 and 2. And in typical Archvillain games, when they give you generic units, they like to give you at least about 4 sculpts. It does vary. I am curious, how do those guys stay on the saddle when that creature burrows? Next up, we have the Maddamu in 4 sculpts, and I really like this creature. It is part bugbear, part ogre, part troll. I like this miniature. Here we have a Yazika, which apparently is kind of like a Drider, except instead of a spider, it's a scorpion. In 4 sculpts. Then we have an Alajani, which looks kind of like a Jinn/genie creature, in 4 sculpts. And then we have the Ik-Najak. I will say, Archvillain Games, you do a phenomenal job, not only with your creativity of the miniatures, but also the names. And I apologize if I have mispronounced any of those as intended. Not my intention, but as you had intended for them to be pronounced. Next up is Bite the Bullet Games. Bite the Bullet Studios is doing Bullet Souls Part 2. I think it's named after maybe a franchise of video games. Kind of a Dark Souls, maybe. So, a lot of these miniatures to me, and they have a throwback, a lot of these miniatures, in my opinion, look like boss monsters. These would be amazing end of the night. This is the final boss your group fights. We have Hannibal the Executioner, next to Leo the Dragon Slayer. We have Malik the Black Blade. We have Cry the Onion Knight and Gabriel the Slave Knight. We have Rayan the Star Scourge along with Mad Pumpkin. Mo, Lord of Blood, and Sir Lawrence, Knight of Sunlight. And then we have Gwen the Dark Sun. I believe there's an alternate sculpt for this, but I do not have a picture to share. Next up, we have Cast and Play, which in my opinion is one of the OG of the tribes and Patreons out there. They are doing vampires this month, and I know it seems like a couple months early for that, but honestly, if you're going to print these, why not start printing them off now, get them painted, and be ready for the month of October. They do have some bases. We'll go in and lead with that. And I did want to put a picture here they have on their advertising of some painted miniatures from this month's release. This month you get the Midnight Valkyries and 3 Vampire Shadow Knights, Ghoulbone Gnars, cannot say that word, and Vampire Night Swoopers. Vampire Gloom Predators and Vampire Noblemen, only 2 of those. 2 Vampire Countesses and Vampire Old Master Mithralis. We have a couple of hordes of bats, and where we have vampires, we probably need some people to hunt those vampires, so some vampire hunters. New to my Patreon video is Crippled God Foundry. They do both a fantasy and a sci-fi release. So let's look at their fantasy release, which for the month of August 2024 is Tome of Elementals, and Realm of Fire. I don't know why I'm mispronouncing that. And notice it is compatible with one-page rules, so they have my attention. We have Brimor, the Eternal Flame, some Fire Giant Demolishers, and Ifriti of Shokran. We have Fire Giant Guardians, some Flame Salamanders, and Flame Worms. If you play Warcraft Rumble, it kind of reminds me of some of the BlackRock teams there. We have Magmins and a Pyro Hydra. I guess that means that thing breathes fire and has multiple heads. That's kind of scary. We have Cinder, a Fire Genasi Monk, and Cetra, the Pyromancer. They also give us several terrain pieces. I won't read all the titles for you. I do like the Forge Hammer though, and the Forge is pretty characterful as well. They also like to give you a bust of their main character here, Brimor. New to my Patreon video, but not new to the scene, is DM Stash, or Dungeon Master's Stash. Dungeon Master's Stash is a very interesting release in that they're basically setting this up as like a 5e D&D, obviously, adventure. So these are the characters, the miniatures that you might need for that. This also comes along with some printable battle maps, as well as a full-length campaign adventure. And I thought it was very neat to see what they're doing here is that you print off the 2D map on a traditional color printer, and then you print out on a 3D printer the terrain pieces that sit on top of the map, and it just all fits together pretty nicely. Here are the miniatures for the month. Big Iron, a soul-forged gunslinger, which also comes with a bust. And Embernos, a Fire Elemi Crusader. And then with the Coldini encampment, we have a modular tower, along with a yurt and modular pieces that go along with that, as well as the palisade walls. I could see using those for orcs or goblins or something else as well, lizardmen even. We have Tingaraya, a flying sea ray, and the 3 faces, which are elemental golems. I really think it's cool when they do the multiple renders with multiple colors, is what I'm saying. We have Vaskathar, a dragonborn of the tides, and Saburu Ryu, the lone dragon. Katarlia, the ascended incarnate. I think I see what you did there. And then we have Elki the Wanderer. Reminds me of Master Oogway. Huden the Summer Breeze, and Andraza the False Incarnate. And then Bezenyok, the Defiler. Next up, new to my video, is Dragon Trapper's Lodge, but definitely not new to the scene of 3D printing. I do want to give them a shout out. As I'm recording this on Friday, August 2nd, they just today launched a frontier on my mini factory for Fates Entwined. So if you have any interest in that, you can check that out. They have kind of two releases this month with August. They have Nellie's Brush of Infinite Wonder and Acolytes of the Primordials Part 3. I don't fully understand the Nellie's Brush. I pretty much have the impression of what here is Princess Nellie is this princess that has a magic ink brush and she paints what children draw. And so we have a collectible Ferret Drake, the Clown Drake they have this month. But you can see Ben 11 drew apparently a Beholder Hydra. And there's the miniature. We have several different. Isaac 8 drew this one. Crix the Devourer was drawn by Eric. And then Leah apparently drew this lady Knoll human, almost like a banshee looking creature. Here's a moon dragon. They did do 3 different sculpts of this. We have Sapphires. I think they did a very good job interpreting that. And here we have a sort of Groot-like creature, I would say. That's me putting a title on it, not them. And here we have a Unicat by Sophia in 3 different sculpts. Next up is Epic Miniatures. Epic Miniatures has already released both releases for this month. It's only the 2nd of the month. Update number 1 is Old Fables. We see a forest treehouse, and we see lots of buildings and scatter pieces. Lots of terrain to be used in lots of different ways. We have Unicorn Classic. Notice that most of these come with a winged variety, or not. A Fawn Druid. A Green Hag. Notice most of the releases from Epic Miniatures will have 3 variants. Some have more, some like this Cat Swarm have less. An Owl Wyvern. A Pixie Swarm and a Mushroom Goblin. I think the Mushroom Goblin is actually a pretty cool miniature. A Fey Adventurer Female. A Mimic Tower, and a Mimic Whale. I know some of you really like Mimics. I am not a huge fan of them, but to each their own. Here we have a Moon Cultist, a Fabled Owlbear, a Baby Bugbear. Don't let his big eyes fool you. A Druid Child Female, a Rose Spirit. Never heard of those before. A Wonder Pixie. Girl that magically turned into a pixie. A Hunter Girl. I believe she's inspired by something, because apparently she has also tamed a Black Panther for her mount. And then we have the Black Panther by itself as well. We have a Fairy Dragon Classic, which I think is just a cool miniature. And then we have update number 2. Update number 2 has already been released, and I'm impressed with this. I'm surprised they did not wait at least a week to do this. And this is Steam Society. So we're going to start off with a lot of Spelljammer influences with a Dragonfly Spelljammer. 2 sculpts for that, or 2 accessories. We have an Airship Pilot, born to fly through the astral planes. We have a Battle Automaton, part of the defensive security system of the airship. We have a Jetpack Headhunter. If you have a bounty on your head, you may be seeing this guy. Or maybe you won't until it's too late. Then we have a Construct Alchemist. It has fun with mixing chemicals. We have a Neo-Trojan Idol. And it says, a gift from the esoteric Steam Society to the new Artificer King. It's definitely not a trap. The Esoteric Society, and I could see these miniatures being very popular amongst the steampunk community. And they have all sorts of different Esoteric Society figures depending on what you may be interested in with the steampunk looks. We have a Steam Servant. Creature is a Steamborn, as the Steam Society would call it. Pure soul, corrupted and mutated with chemicals by the cult, until no humanity was left inside of him. We have an Automaton Swarm. They seems like everyone needs a set of minions to help them out. We have an Exosuit Artificer. They build their own custom exosuit, and there are a few versions of this. Notice this one comes without a helmet, or you can get one that is actually literally building their exosuit. We have a Clockwork Monodrone, which comes in multiple variants. We have a Construct Gladiator, a Destruction Automaton, or Automation. I put Automation, it should be Automaton, apologies. I know I would make a mistake somewhere. Tinkerer Knight, needs modern equipment, True Man of Chivalry. And then the final release for, the next to last release for Epic Miniatures is a Steam Dragon. And then we have the Iron Mind Warrior. Next up we have is the Flesh of Gods Miniatures, which is new to my videos, but of course not new to Patreons. They are releasing the Unholy Crusade. The Unholy Crusade is starting off with this gargantuan, the Crimson Maw. We have various heroes and NPCs. Several medium-sized enemies for your group to fight. Some large enemies. Seem to be based around the Four Horsemen. Some huge enemies. Ah, there's Death and War. We just had Famine and Pestilence. We have Vargas Moonblade and Silveris Twilight Warden, which are apparently challenge winners, custom pieces that be released. A frame diorama, which I thought was a very unique prop piece to be released. And a couple of busts, Harker the Bloodsword and Damascus Vampire Knight. And in the throwback pack you have a Leonin Knight, a Vampire Witch, and a Draconic Bat. Next up we have Fleshcraft Studios. Fleshcraft Studios has a very small release, but a very good release, which is the Mortals of Ashmorn, their third release in this set. You'll notice it's a rich merchant up on the top right, who's the leader, his daughter, which is the support, and then 3 hawkers of pies, apples, and bread. Next up we have Ghamak, or Ghamak, which is a new Patreon for me to follow in the videos, but not new to the scene. They do both a fantasy and sci-fi release. They have not released renders of their sculpts yet, but there's some concept art. Looks like we'll be getting some dwarves, along with a pretty cool flamethrower cannon. Some more dwarves. Some sort of knight on horseback. And some orcs. Goonmaster Games does a lot of anthropomorphic figures, and so here we see the malevolent mole rats and the ball hogs, along with a bunch of bases. They're also releasing the rowdy red pandas. I'm not sure what the rats are called, and some basing bits, some things to make your bases a little bit more unique. Highlands Miniatures is returning to Eternal Dynasties this month. And here you can see what all you can expect to get. 3 Mounted Ancient Guard on Great Snakes, and yeah, you don't need me to read that to you, do you? I think they will release better pictures as the month goes. They also have released their timeline, so if you're interested in backing Highlands Miniatures, here's what you can do. In September, you have the Ancient Elves. In October, for Spooktober, they'll go to Transylvania Undead. And then they'll come back to some Elves for November and December, and look at the Sewer Vermin come January. To Labyrinth Models, which is new to my videos, but again, not new to the scene. Now, their release this month is the 3 Musketeers, and it seems to be pretty much influenced very heavily by the movie that I grew up watching. It was a favorite of mine and my brother's. So here we see the Palace Guards along with some Musketeers, along with some of Richelieu's guards. And there is Cardinal Richelieu along with Milady. We see the King and Rochefort, and the Queen and Constance. I do believe it is the Queen on the left, not the right. Yes, the Queen would have the long, bigger collar and the fleur-de-lis. I wanted to put Loot Studios in here because Loot Studios does do a fantasy release every month, and this month, for August 2024, their release is the Chaos in Haydale. Now, Loot Studios is not on Tribes or Patreon. They're on their own website, but they are releasing 4 heroes here. 12 enemies. Some environment. You know, in case your characters need to fight an old meal. I don't see a gazebo, though. Apparently I have the environment in here twice for some reason. Sorry. The Dauntless Helmet is the prop. We have 4 busts of some of their characters. Well, the Mantic Vault for this month will be releasing several different things. There's a lot of sci-fi releases, but there's some others as well. Mantic put out a small game called Hellboy, if you did not know, and they put out the busts that come with this. So here is Abe and Hellboy himself, along with Johann and Liz. We have barrel and cannonballs and beacon. Now, Mantic for this month has released this as being part of Vanguard, but Mantic, I'm pretty sure these were all part of a terrain crate called Battlefield Objectives. Because if we continue to look, we see a bottle crate and beacon flames, a coin chest, and a damsel in distress. You need to have something to fight over, or fight for. We have a dead spy. Perhaps we need to recover what he fell, or a dragon egg. Sure, it's going to make a mama mad. We have some elven stones of various sorts, along with a magical stone, a tree stump, which looks to have a bag of probably some important stuff in it, as well as a weapons crate. But again, all of these seem to be part of that terrain crate Battlefield Objectives. Armada has some releases this month with Ghost Fleet. This is a medium vessel called the Elohoi. I'm mispronouncing that terribly. I cannot fathom it in my head, so we'll move on. Ghost Fleet Medium is Icebreaker, and the Ghost Fleet Small Ship, Thunderer. And then we have a couple of tiny Ghost Fleet ships, the Argus and the Needlefang. One Page Rules is releasing Shadow Stalkers alongside the High Elf fleets. A lot of the Shadow Stalkers are still in works in progress, so we'll be coming back to look at these again in the future. So let's kind of look at, see what we have there. A lot of these miniatures still have not been released to where One Page Rules is happy with them. For Age of Fantasy Quest, we have a War Daemon Barbarian. The Printing Goes Ever On is celebrating their birthday month this month. So do be aware that there's lots of things that they'll be dealing with, sales, so if you have your eye on any of the Printing Goes Ever On, this might be the month to look into it. Tales of the Elven Kingdoms Volume 2 will be a miniature customized module software that you'll be able to use. And then for their RPG release, we see Lullaby of Stone. So here is a more in-depth look at those two releases. Lullaby of Stone, again, is intended more for RPGs, so if you want those types of miniatures, if it fits something that you may want, it's worth looking at. And then if you're very much into elves, you want them to ride horseback, you don't want them to ride horseback, you'll be able to customize a lot of things there. Rescale Miniatures is the renaming of, I forget the original name off the top of my head, but they are releasing this month this set here, the Pit of Pestilence. And we're looking to look at a few of these miniatures in detail. Many of these are alternative sculpts of each other. Some very detailed, interesting miniatures going on. So we see a brass dragon that is apparently being captured and fought. We have the Putrid Servants, and this is Model A from that set. We have a Carrick's Guard. This is has a wing, I believe is what the W stands for. And we also have one that is in pursuit. We have a Dravon Hover and a Dravon Assault. Wait a second. Something about this looks really familiar. Oh dear God, no, they did not. Is that a giant mosquito? Well, pestilence. And then we have a Purulent Demon Throne. I thought it was probably best to look at him from the side. We have an Executioner with a crossbow with an axe. We have a Sludgeborn Descent. It is descending down the rock. And an Ulcerated Colossus. These are some fairly disturbing miniatures. Rescale. Next up, we have RNE Studio. RNE Studio is new to my videos, but I just wanted to introduce them. They are kind of more of a, I guess, a modern this month. We see Chapel Noir Volume 2, and I'm not exactly sure what these are. These seem to be kind of a H.P. Lovecraft style miniatures. Mask of the Red Death, Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, any of those kinds of inspirations. Bram Stoker, perhaps. They also have a champion tier that you can add a little bit more money and get access to these miniatures as well. STL Miniatures this month is doing the Beggars Guild. They also did a Kickstarter for Frost City, and they continue to expand that through the Patreon with the Banshee. They just wrapped up a very successful Kickstarter Rangers, and they're adding to that with the Patreon with the Dark Roots. With the Beggars Guild, you get a pigeon coop, along with various tents, amenities, and places that the thieves would hide. Or the beggars, rather. Thieves, beggars. We have a few various beggars of various races and sorts. We have to have someone to tend the pigeon coop. And I like the fact that he has a rat on a stick, but not how you usually think of that. Reminds me of Home Alone 2. Next up, we have Titan Forge Studios. Titan Forge Studios is continuing with their wizards, and I'm really impressed with some of what they have this month. But we also have the release of the orcs. So with the orcs, we have, don't know the names of these offhand. I believe on the right, these are giants. But we see we have one on a giant boar. And a boar-like creature. We have some what I believe are intended to be trolls, but I could be wrong. and orcs, both melee and missile, ranged if you prefer. With the wizard releases, we have a guy that seems to have a lot of critters around him, and another guy with a broom, so I suppose he takes care of the halls. We have a small short wizard with his wand on stack of books, and another wizard with a green thumb. We have another wizard that seems to be looking into her crystal ball and being served by a ghost. I just now realized that. And we have another wizard who is, I guess, brewing as a pot of tea. And these actually are part of the wizard's release as well, these suits of armor. Titan Forge also likes to do some RPG miniatures, and every month they release 3 miniatures for the heroes. These often have multiple sculpts, so there's the 3 heroes. They also have some enemies and critters for you to fight against or just to encounter in the world of your adventures. And in typical Titan Forge fashion, you get a whole set of bases that you can look at as well and print out as needed. Next up, we have what is called TPK Lab. I'm guessing that stands for Total Party Kill Lab. Their August release has not really been released, so we're looking at their August preview. You see here we see a Tiefling Enchanter. We have a Tiefling Warlock. And Crispin is a human that is devoted to a religion, to justice. I like this miniature. They also have some decor for your dungeon, as well as a stone dragon gate, but that is the limits of what they have released as a preview. Next up, we have White Werewolf Tavern, and their releases seem to be more of a preview at this point. They don't have any actual renders of the models yet. So we see Pure Chow and an Iron King, and apparently this all comes from the Iron King set. We have Zoo Iron Lady and a Dead Assassin, a Jester Killer, and a Homunculus. Again, hopefully we'll update this later in the month when we see some actual renders. Last but not least, we have World Forge Studios. World Forge Miniatures this month is doing a swamp diorama, and mostly terrain in their release. Mostly terrain. So we have modular walkways, which I could easily see adapted to Goblin Town from Hobbit if you needed that for that. They also have a modular tree of a few different sorts that you can put together as you wish. There's a couple more ways these trees can be put together, along with some various lily pads and cattails, signposts, and more. And of course, a frog bard. So anyway, thanks for watching.